You're listening to Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Karbley. We're just two fans sharing our love for the game and Carolina Panthers football. So join us, crack open a cold one, some bubbly, a little wine, some scotch. We don't care, whatever makes you sleep better at night. Before we dive into the episode, a little self-promotion. Stop what you're doing. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap. Join the discussion on our Facebook group. We have over 2,500 members. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Panthers on Tap. Well, I first want to start off the show. Me and Bryson, he brought this up to me a couple of days ago, and he, my buddy, had pointed it out who listens to our podcast. But I first want to apologize for jinxing Bryce Young because last week I was kind of talking shit about. Well, I was just tired of all the narrative about he's too small and that sort of thing, and the other quarterbacks in that first couple picks. And then obviously the day the podcast drops, an injury pops out of nowhere, and Bryce Young has an ankle injury, obviously missed last week. So I apologize. It was my jinx. I am never talking anything about injuries when it comes to Bryce Young, or rather more anyone on this team, because clearly it jinxed them. I even knocked on wood, Bryson, and it clearly didn't help at the time, but I just wanted to get that out of the way right off the top. As we all know, Panthers are 0-3. Probably, I think you can agree with me on this, not the start that we expected out of this team. Maybe if you've expected the record, because this is a tough stretch for them with the two divisional games and then the Seahawks on the road. But I don't think anyone expected to see the struggles they've seen so far. So let's get into it. There's a lot to talk about, specifically on offense. Let's start with that. What did you see? What didn't you see?
I'll start with the good, I guess, because there's a lot less of that than there is of the bad. I thought Andy Dalton played really well throughout the whole game, despite a lot of pressure from the not so good Seahawks defensive line. And I thought he did a good job, maneuvering the pocket, moving when he needed to, throwing on the run, making the right decision. He just looked good throughout the whole game. I had tweeted that I thought Andy Dalton was the best player on the Panthers this past weekend. And I still stand by that because I thought he played really well. I think he was third or fourth in the league for passing yards this past week. So, it's a game where he had a career high in pass attempts. I don't really think that he foresaw that coming as a 35-year-old or however old he is quarterback at this point in his career. So I'm curious to see how he feels this week after that game. After some, he took some hits, but again, thought he played really well. He came in and served. I did more than his job as a backup quarterback. I would say. Another old guy, Adam Thielen, showed up big time
this week, man.
Yeah, showed up big time. Was 145 yards receiving.
11 catches.
He was involved heavy throughout the game, and he was Andy's go-to guy, and it showed and continued to get open. And hopefully he can do that for Bryce consistently throughout these next however many games we got left. I don't even care anymore, but hopefully he can provide that blanket that he did for Andy to Bryce.
I don't want to jump in, but I'm just curious. Do you think what you've seen from them and this offense, the good stuff this week, was a prelude to what we can expect from what Frank Reich's offense is supposed to look like? Sorry, I probably made that really confusing when it didn't need to be, but this is what Frank Reich's offense was supposed to look like, was this week. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Although I think he admitted in one of his pressers that Thomas Brown and Parks Frazier were the ones that schemed up the DJ Chark touchdown. So, I think for the most part that this is a Frank Reich offense. I don't really remember a whole lot of shots. I mean, there were a couple plays to Chark and, a couple other players shot-wise, but most of it was within 10, 15 yards of the line of scrimmage and a non-existent run game. Again, another week of a disappointing game for Miles Sanders. He was all right in the receiving aspect of his game, but again, Miles Sanders has zero vision. I I don't understand. I've seen the all 22 screenshots of him running. It's a handoff to the right side of the line. He runs directly into the gap where it's filled with a defensive lineman, and the left side is a gaping hole, and he just doesn't see it. Unfortunately, that's been through the same thing for 3 weeks with the Panthers. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going through Miles' head, but another game where Chuba, I believe he only had one carry. I don't know what the deal is, not wanting to give him carries, but he's been efficient in his short time that he has been able to carry the ball. So, yeah, the running game was miserable. The tight ends weren't really involved at all. Another surprising thing for me. I thought that, typically in a Frank Reich offense in the past, the tight ends have always been very involved, and it just hasn't been the case in Carolina up to this point, at least. So, other wide receivers, obviously Shark had a good game, his best game as a Carolina Panther.
Baby Shark. Yeah, he rocked it, man. He had some damn good catches in that game.
Yeah, the one on the sideline was probably his best catch, honestly, going out of bounds. Then he had the big touchdown. And I've been saving the best for last on offense, and that's the offensive line. I don't even know where to start with this, man.
You got a lot of positives, man. I'm shocked.
Well, the only positives I've had was Andy Dalton and the two receivers. The running game's been terrible, and I was being sarcastic about the offensive line. They were awful, absolutely terrible. Our best offensive lineman was Calvin Throckmorton. Zavala gave up 14 hurries and had a 0 PFF grade. Me and you had the same PFF grade as Zavala did on Sunday. I don't understand what was going on. And his partner beside of him, Ike Ekwonu, was just as bad with 4 false starts, gave up a sack, and I don't know the number on the hurries, but
I got you covered here. Here you go.
Terrible. Okay, I guess he didn't give up a sack, but 1 hit and 3 hurries and 4 pressures. Look at that 0 grade for Jalen Zavala. I didn't even know that was possible. I
didn't either.
I thought you got a 10 at least for writing your name on the test. And they got a 0. Jalen Zavala got a 0. Calvin Throckmorton again was our best offensive lineman, and we just signed him 3 weeks ago. I don't understand what is going on with this offensive line. It's so disappointing because, again, this was we thought this was a strength coming into the season. Bozeman has been awful. I know he's a fan favorite, but he has not been good. He has not lived up to that contract that, he was such a priority in this offseason. He's been awful. Chandler Zavala was better at right guard. I'm going to be a little lenient with him, although that 0 is disgusting. It makes me want to throw up. Again, he's a rookie. He transitioned to the left guard position, but that's supposed to be his natural position on the football field. Obviously struggled there versus a Seahawks defensive line that's not very good. And Ike Ekwonu has regressed. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Last year was a really good year for him, and he's just not been that this year, unfortunately. And the 4 false start penalties are inexcusable, completely unacceptable. Fucking Andy Dalton couldn't even change the play. He could not audible because Ike was going to false start every single time. And I was so mad watching this game. I can't believe that a guy we picked up off the street comes in and is our best offensive lineman with guys like Ike Ekwonu, Bozeman, and Moten on this offensive line. Moten, of course, was the best pass blocking offensive lineman based off of these grades. But a lot of frustration from my part, especially, in regard to this offensive line. I'm surprised Dalton played the way he did with all of these hurries and pressures and sacks 2 sacks that the offensive line gave up. So, I mean, hats off to Andy. I don't know if I want Bryce behind this offensive line right now. I really don't know if I do. I mean, this is piss poor. This is awful. And you're going to go against the guy who leads the NFL in sacks next week. So I don't know. I really don't know with a bum ankle that, obviously got ongoing issues with it. I don't know if I want him behind this offensive line.
Yeah. You said a lot. What I was going to say. I thought Andy. I'll just start with Andy. I thought he played fantastic. I don't know if he was the best player on Sunday. I think he was up there. I think there were some guys on defense that played pretty damn well. But the muddied pocket he dealt with that entire game, and to navigate it and to extend plays. And there was a lot of plays on offense where guys weren't open on their first look, and then Andy would, move in the pocket, get outside pocket, out of structure, and that's when things really opened up. I thought Carolina's wide receivers do well in zone coverage, and I think you saw that on display on Sunday. Seattle plays a more zone scheme defense, and Carolina, found some holes within that, and I think that's kind of where Adam Thielen thrives. Carolina, the first 2 weeks, played, the Saints and Falcons that played press man, and they struggled, and they get a zone team that, with Seattle, and then Minnesota is also a zone scheme on defense. I don't know if they're going to change it up when they come in, but they typically will play zone. So that's something to look forward to this weekend, because I thought Carolina's receivers obviously did a lot more. Kind of disagree with you on the deep shots. I think they definitely took way more than they have in the past. I think it was 7. They took 3 last week, so doubled that already. They obviously completed 4 of them. 2 to Chark, 1 to Thielen, and I can't remember who the other one was, and that's what, plus 20 yards or whatever it is. And then offensively, the offensive line, we talked about that, and I want to get in the run game in a little bit here, but I don't have there's not an answer right now. I know in preseason we talked about, this offensive line and Ike Ekwonu, and it isn't the season yet. It's only preseason. Let's see what he does. We're in now week 3, and he has definitely regressed from last year, without a doubt. And it sucks because he looked decent last year. And I think it has to do with various things. And one of them is this is an entirely different scheme now. There's a lot more passing. And up to this point, there's been a lot more passing. I don't think Frank Reich wants it that way, but that's just the way the plays have been called. And we knew, I think we both talked about this, the year Icky was drafted, that, and a majority of people knew this, Ike Ekwonu's strong suit was run blocking. And they're not doing a lot of runs, so he has struggled up to this point in pass blocking, and the way it's schemed up. Are there things they could probably help him out with, whether it's chips with tight end and stuff? Yeah, but that only goes so far. I also think a big part of the offensive line is Corbett. Like him not being in there, I think not only his play within his sole position himself at left guard, but I just feel like his leadership across that line has been missed too. And then it doesn't help that both, Icky in his second year and then a rookie is on the left side. I don't know if Zavala would have been better off sticking to the right. Again, we don't know. We can't reverse it and see what he would do. But, and I know there's familiarity there in college, but those 2 guys on the left side in the pass game has just been god awful. And I mean, you see it here statistically. We should not be seeing red, and we're seeing way too much red. And then you talked about Bozeman. Bozeman has struggled. Love the guy, love everything about him, but up to this point, just hasn't played up to par. I thought Moton has been solid, but again, Moton had some mental errors this weekend that you shouldn't see out of a guy, 4, 5, 6 years in this league. So that was concerning. But overall, I think Moton's been literally the rock of this offensive line. And we talked about last week, he's typically in the green in a lot of these areas. Obviously, he had some mental errors this week. But, yeah, this line, man, and And I kind of alluded to it in in our projections when before we started the year that this shit's going to take some time. Like it's not good to this point, and that's not acceptable. I'm not saying that, but it's just frustrating to watch because based off of last year, and we talked about continuity, James Camp, one of the top offensive line coaches, and here we are, and this is the group that has been the worst on the offensive side of the ball, next to wide receivers. So that's been frustrating. You talked about it. I wanted to bring it up. But we got to talk, and we haven't got to really majority was the false start. So let's dive into that even more because it was pathetic. I'm going to get rid of these grades. There we go. 8 false starts, Bryson. I just want to get, what was your reaction when it was unfolding in the game? Because I think I slammed my fist down on the table, and I think I actually spilt my beer at one point because I was so pissed. I mean, it was at one point it was like 2 or 3 in a row, like in one series. It was so fucking bad. What was your reaction when that was happening?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely yelling at the TV, screaming. I mean, it's unacceptable. I mean, it like Frank talked about. You practiced on Tuesday and Wednesday with noise louder than, or what Frank says was louder than, Seattle, and there wasn't one false start, and then you get into the game, and the quarterback can't call an audible because you're moving when the quarterback moves. I don't understand how you have 4 mental errors like that in a row, or 4 mental errors throughout the game. From you specifically, I mean, Icky was half of the false starts. So I don't get it. Moten false started. I believe Zavala false started, and then I don't think Throckmorton did at once.
Moten had 2 of them, I believe.
Okay,
so there's 6 right there between him and Icky. I don't know who the other 2 were. Probably Zavala one, and then I don't know who the other one was, but man, just it was embarrassed. Like it was embarrassing to watch. It wasn't even like.
And then they make the video after, like Seattle does, and
I don't blame them. I'd be doing that too. It was. I would be laughing my ass off if I was.
Absolutely, it just adds to the embarrassment, though.
It's totally.
We're a fucking laughing stock right now, so it's nothing new in Carolina, but it's just so unexpected to start off the year. I didn't, all off season the talk was, or even from the the upper management on this team, we're just a quarterback away from competing for the NFC South, and here we are, 0-3 to start the year versus 2 lower level teams in the Saints and the Falcons. And then the Seahawks are a decent team. They're not great, but a decent team. And we couldn't get 1 win out of those 3 games. So
I just thought of this while you were talking, and people might say this is drastic, but I'm just trying to think because Icky has struggled up to this point. Is it worth benching him and dealing with the pain of benching him to light a fire under his ass to say you need to get your shit together?
Not if Bryce Young's out there. No, not if Bryce Young's out there. I don't think he's been a turntable at left tackle. I don't think he's the worst thing ever. I get the false starts and the mental errors that he's had, but to risk that with your franchise quarterback, the guy you just drafted number 1 overall, I just don't think that's something you play with.
That's fair. No, I was just curious. I think he needs to keep getting reps under this offense, but I thought I'd pose the question. Just thought it was interesting. Yeah. But yeah, 33 pressures the offensive line gave up on 36. Panthers gave up 36 pressures to the Seahawks defense. That was the most in week 3 by an offensive line. So just been more brutal for this team. And I do think, and this goes into my question. We have some questions from the gallery, I'm going to call them, and we'll start with this one. We'll go to the other one later when we talk about it. But I know, Bryson, when Icky was drafted, I believe it was Charles Cross you were in favor of. Is that correct? Or was it Evan Neal?
Yeah, both.
Okay. Did the Panthers pick the right offensive tackle in 2022?
I think they did. I think Evan Neal is struggling more than Ike Ekwonu is currently. Charles Cross has been injured. He had a good year last year, but I think Ike has everything that you want in a left tackle. He's got the intangibles, but he's just going through a sophomore slump right now. And I think that that's something that is really typical across multiple positions in this league. So he's going to grow. I think he's going to overcome these issues. I hope he is for Bryce's sake. Like I said, he's a super smart guy, has everything that you need athletic wise. It's just kind of putting it all together and stacking good game after good game after good game for him. And I think year 3, year 4 is really going to be a lot different than what we're seeing right now for Ike Ekwonu. So I'm still on the still beating the table for him. I do think that it was the right choice. At the time, I didn't. I really didn't. But what I saw last year from him was really impressive in the pass blocking attempts that he had. So and especially the run game, he's very impressive in the run game. So I do think that he was the right choice.
Yeah, I would say, just based off of statistics, he was the right choice. I was looking at PFF, and that's not the end all be all. You really got to watch the games, and I understand that. But just looking across the board, last year, Evan Neal, 8 sacks, 10 hits, 34 hurries, 52 pressures. That was just last year alone. Icky, 6 sacks, 1 hit, 20 hurries, 27 pressures, so about half that. Obviously, the sacks were pretty close together. Charles Cross, 7 sacks, 4 hits, 39 hurries, 50 pressures. So statistically, Icky was the best tackle in last year's draft. I think right now we're seeing kind of the growing pains we saw in weeks 1 through 5 of last year with Ike Ekwonu and the struggles he had early on. I think it's going to take him time. I'll be curious to kind of revisit this in 5-6 weeks when, that he's at that point he should be already settled in, but to get into this offense and to really, take on, because, and you mentioned it, these guys are taking on, 58 passes in this game, which kind of goes on to my next point, or what I kind of wanted to discuss here was just the offensive scheme itself. 58 passes with Andy Dalton and 14 rushes, and that included 2 runs by Andy Dalton, so 12 technically with the other backs. I think this is a dumb question, but I'll ask it. Is this a formula for success for this team?
Well, from the small bit of evidence that we have that we've studied so far, we are 0-3. We have not won a game. So no, it's not. But I understand why they threw 58 passes and only rushed the ball 12 times, not counting Andy Dalton rushes. It's because the run game wasn't working at all. And I think that's a lot on Miles Sanders because, again, when you go back and you watch the tape, there are holes. There is opportunity for positive yardage, but Miles Sanders just doesn't see it. And I don't understand what the infatuation – well, I guess I do understand why they want to try to force feed Miles is because they paid him handsomely for a running back, and they want to get their money's worth out of him. But he's not shown the ability to consistently have the vision that he needs on the football field. He did have that nice run where he contact was made in the backfield. He spun out of the contact and got 5-6 yards on it. But that was probably one of his best runs of his Panthers career so far. So I understand why they went away from it. Miles was averaging like 1.2 yards a carry at one point. Like you have a better chance getting yards passing the ball, and they did throughout. I thought the offense moved the ball very efficiently, at least for the Panthers in Panthers terms to start the year. So that's why they threw that thing 58 times. And I understand why they did it, but they need to rotate running backs more. They need to quit inactivating Raheem Blackshear. Give that guy a chance to show something on offense. Tariq Cohen we were all open arms about them signing Tariq Cohen, bring him to the active roster. You need to get a rotation going because Miles Sanders isn't doing it by himself. You got Chuba, who's been effective when he's had the ball. Again, you got Blackshear, who has been effective last year when he had opportunities to get the ball. And then you signed Tariq Cohen. I mean, you have other players that can produce, but you're stuck on Miles Sanders because you paid him a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not harping too bad on Sanders personally. I don't think there was a lot of holes for him on Sunday personally, just from what I saw, just first glance at the game when I was watching. I did see some of the stuff today that they pulled. I thought some of it wasn't fair, some of the screenshots they were taking, but something's got to give, whether it's blocking or the run game or switching up runs with Hubbard or bringing in Blackshear, whatever the case. Like, Carolina needs to be able to run the ball for this team to be successful on offense along with the pass. And, Frank talked about it this week. You'd like to get 60-40, 60% passing, 40% run, or, I think he said like 55-45, something like that. Pretty close. But Carolina needs a run game. And like you said, they paid Miles Sanders. They got to get, I think the holes just haven't been open. I really do. And I think they need to scheme that up better, and guys just need to, be executing better, because there are things that I think Miles Sanders is really good at, and he offers, and a little bit more versatile than what we saw from Foreman last year. But yeah, it's not good enough whatsoever. I thought one of the key plays of that game that didn't go Carolina's way. I've been trying to point these out every week, and this week it was a third down, I believe, and you had Sanders coming across on a drag. He beat the linebacker, and Andy missed it by literally inches. Mm-hmm. He hits that. Sanders might, get 15 yards, if not score on that play, or set them up to go in and score a touchdown. That was, I think, late in the third. I think that would have changed the complexion a little bit and momentum for the Panthers. So stuff like that you'd like to have back, but I definitely think there needs to be more of a rotation. And this week, I get it. I understood why they kind of went away from it, but they need to stick to their guns and keep going with the run. And we didn't even talk about LaVisca. I thought we saw a little bit more of it in preseason, in practices and training camp, but getting him more involved in the run game might help. I feel like it always seems like they give him one rush or two early in the game, and then they never go back to it. And it typically works out for, a 4 or 5 yard chunk play. And then I don't know what happened. I don't understand what happens with the play calling, but it's just, they don't go back to it. So I feel like that, that could be something. Even if, getting wide receivers involved, and I get it, they don't have these speedy ass guys out there either. So that might be why. But, some of these, you saw that a lot during the last coaching tenure was, maybe some end arounds or stuff like that, just to get something different in there to kind of open that up a little bit, because I feel like that's where this passing game can open up, as well as these play action built off of the run. So that needs to get going. There's the run game has to get going.
And you made me think of, like, we watch all these other offenses around the league, and they have these cool trick plays, like even, a little ode to your buddies, the Packers. Jordan Love fucked it up, I guess it was a bad pass back to him that he kind of dropped on the ground, picked it up, and then overthrew the receiver. But like kind of just like a, behind the line of scrimmage pass and pass back to the quarterback to kind of free up which receivers, or flea flicker, or, back in the day we saw the Christian McCaffrey pass to Manhurts for a touchdown. Like, why haven't we seen anything like that? Like, I don't understand, when you don't have the talent level to beat other teams, why? Like, that's the easiest way to get points. But I guess they don't trust them. I guess they don't think that they can execute at a high enough level to do it. But I think that they need to include some of that, as well as the play action that you're talking about. But it felt like every time they tried to play action and they gave Andy a boot out of the pocket, there's a defender right in his face immediately. Like the offensive line's not blocking, the tight ends aren't chipping, the running back's not picking it up. I don't know what the deal is, but there's immediately a guy in your face. And that was with Bryce too, and it's with Andy continuing. So I don't know. I mean, my main takeaway from this game was that it looked like a poorly coached team. And that is not something I expected saying. I expected saying about this team with this coaching staff coming into this season. The whole offseason, the talk was about the all-star coaching staff, but you come in and the Carolina Panthers are the most penalized team in the NFL. You have 8 false starts, and the offensive creativity isn't there. The defense can't stop the run for anything. And then, they go down a couple players, and then they can't stop the pass. I don't know what's going on. I'm hoping that, the longer that we get into the season, the more things improve. But, we're going to get into a couple injuries here in a little bit. I just don't know if that's going to happen. I really don't at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. I agree. I think the team obviously wasn't ready to play in Seattle. Like, that's what I got out of it. You cannot go in and have 8 false starts. Like, that just can't happen. And they are I want to say they're the second most flagged team. I looked that up. They have 31 according to the NFL penalty data, whatever the hell that is, some Twitter account. And actually the Packers are the worst team in the league for penalties. I think they have 33 or something like that. But anyway, second, whatever, first, it don't matter. They're very, yes. So that definitely needs to be cleaned up. I almost feel like, and I think this kind of goes not so much to false starts, but I feel like Frank Reich lets his guys play a little bit more loose. It seems like, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's kind of the vibe I get just from press conferences and stuff like that. And he's more of, kind of take care of your own, take care of your shit. You're an adult here type of thing. So
it's not working.
Yes, I mean, no doubt about it. Let's talk about this. One more offensive question. This was, again, from the gallery. This is it. So don't be getting on me about this, our listeners. This is word for word. I'm reading it to you. Any worry yet that you or the Panthers have drafted the wrong guy with how well Andy Dalton looked on offense and the other 2 rookies at quarterback are looking like they have a really bright future? Did the Panthers draft the wrong QB? That's a question we got.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if the gallery watched the first 2 games and the ability that Bryce Young showed when he had open receivers. I would pull up the chart of the amount of open windows that he's had to throw into and his accuracy. He's the most accurate quarterback in the NFL when he has an open window. Yeah, CJ Stroud's looked good and Anthony Richardson's looked good. They both looked really good, but I think Bryce has also looked good in the chances that he's had to succeed. Again, this is an offensive line that's playing awful, one of the worst in the league. Right now, they're on pace to give up the most hurries ever recorded in NFL history by Pro Football Focus. So that's not good at all. A running game that's non-existent. Wide receivers that can't get separation, although Adam Thielen is improving, I feel like, week to week. Mingo, statistically one of the lowest amount of separation for a wide receiver in the NFL through the first 3 weeks. And that's it was your wide receiver 2. Now that Shark's back, he'll probably, go down to 3 or 4 if he's healthy after the concussion. But I think I still have full faith in Bryce Young. I think that if he were in the situations that the other 2 guys were in, I think he would be doing the same thing they're doing. Unfortunately, I think that CJ Stroud has a better team around him. His offensive line's better, and his wide receivers are better, and his running game's been better. Same thing with Anthony Richardson. So, and ultimately, I think the coaching's been better in both of those places. Steichen in Indianapolis, and then D'Amico Ryans in Houston have kind of just set their guys up better for success. But again, I think Bryce is still the best quarterback out of this draft. I'm not giving up on him after 3 games 2 games and him missing the 3rd. But I think from the first 2 games, I've seen enough to feel good about the pick from for Bryce. I think that he obviously made some mistakes, but again, when he's had opportunity, he's most of the time hitting his passes. He's had a couple overthrows, but I think that he has shown in limited fashion, I'll give you that, but the ability and the promise to be a good quarterback in this league for a long time. So I am very far from saying that we picked the wrong guy. I just think he's in a shitty situation right now.
Yeah, I think it's asinine even ask this question. So that's where I'm at with it. I only took it because, I had some buddies reach out that have listened to our show before and just pose it. They're not Panther fans. But we are 2 games into his career, 2 fucking games, like pump the brakes. He has shown flashes from the limited amount of snaps and offensive plays we've seen from this team and throwing the ball. And there's no secret if you've watched this team, Carolina has not got separation. There's a reason why JT O'Sullivan was ripping 19 Adam Thielen and ripping Mingo on routes and stuff like that the first 2 weeks. Go pull up the charts that you just mentioned in your reasoning of Bryce Young when he gets separation in open windows and his accuracy in those. When those windows are open, he's hitting them. These wide receivers, it's no secret across this league, they've struggled up to this point. Now, I get it. It's a lot of excuses. I understand that. And I'm not going to, make anyone believe that I watched every single play Stroud or Anthony Richardson have played this season, because I haven't. I've seen highlights. And from my understanding, I've seen a lot of CJ Stroud playing from behind and, them behind by a lot. He obviously had a really good game this last week in a win over the Jaguars. But we need to relax, and I get it. There's a lot of people who didn't want the Panthers to draft Bryce Young, and they are loving every minute of this right now that are Panther fans, which is fucking pathetic, if you ask me. Give this guy time. I see people on Twitter all the time already saying, Andy Dalton's better than Bryce Young. He's played 2 games. Andy Dalton's played 160. Like, let's chill the fuck out here. And I apologize for saying so many fucking F words, but it is ridiculous.
I know, and I have the same exact.
I don't even know if you can make this assessment after a year. This is like a 2 or 3 year assessment after the fact. Obviously, you're going to see growth probably out of all of them throughout this season. But to ask this 2 games in, 2 weeks into the season, and just because Bryce Young got, a guy landed on his ankle, it wasn't because he was small. It had nothing to do with him being small. A fucking 300-pound lineman, or not a 300-pound lineman, but, guy upper 200s landed on his ankle. It don't matter what size you are, you ain't going to come out of that. So,
I think it's important to note. I think it's very important to note that Andy Dalton faced one of the worst passing defenses in the league with their 2 starting corners out. I think that if it was Bryce Young healthy playing, he's going to throw, or he's going to look a lot better than he has in the first 2 games versus a Saints and Falcons defense that is much better overall than the Seahawks defense. And again, the Seahawks are missing their 2 starting corners. 2 of their starting corners. So I think when you say, well, Andy Dalton looked much better. Andy Dalton, he played one of the worst passing defenses in the league. So Bryce Young would have looked probably just as good, if not maybe a little bit less, just based off of experience. I mean, like you said, Andy Dalton's been in the league. He's played 160 games. This would have been Bryce's 3rd. Andy Dalton's seen everything that defense has thrown at him. Bryce Young is still getting his feet wet in this league. Like, you can't judge a quarterback until
I think this was the game to be the get right game for
It was
Bryce.
going to, yes, absolutely. It was going to be. And we even saw it. Adam Thielen was getting open. The corners are not good in Seattle when, especially when they've got 2 of their starters missing. Adam Thielen was getting open. DJ Shark was getting open. Bryce is going to hit those throws just like Andy did. Like, nobody, even the people who are doubting Bryce, nobody is saying he can't read a defense. Nobody's saying that. Bryce can read a defense. He can read it like a fucking book. And that was his biggest, I guess, intangible coming into this league. So I think, year 3 is when you really start to say, okay, has this guy progressed? Has this guy made the jump? Has this guy showing promise? 2 games in is just inexcusable. I mean, me and my own job, when I was 2 days in on the job, I guess 2 months in on the job, do they expect me to know everything and be able to do my job to the best ability and just seamlessly, get everything right? No. And I think it's important to have that same outlook for Bryce transitioning from college to the NFL. It is hard, especially for quarterbacks. And yeah, CJ Stroud's looked really good. Anthony Richardson's looked really good. But again, you got to take into consideration the totality of the circumstances. And they've been surrounded with much better coaching up to this point and much better offensive weapons. So if you're writing off Bryce, I mean, and you're a Panthers fan and you're writing off Bryce, just please go get a new team. Like, I don't understand why you would do that after your team has traded off so much assets to trade up and get this guy who has shown promise. But I mean, it's just people that were, like you said, Curtis, that were set in their ways. They didn't want Bryce. They wanted CJ Stroud, or they wanted Richardson in the first place. So they're looking for any excuse whatsoever to write him off or to tear him down in any way possible. And I think he's doing a hell of a job, maintaining his drive and his focus and not paying attention to social media and just staying focused on his goal of being a good quarterback in this league.
Yeah, and first 2 weeks, I thought Bryce was the bright spot of the offense. Yeah. And I'm not saying he's had a great start. He hasn't. It's been slower than what I expected. And I think it has a lot to do with this offensive line and this front office who thought bringing in a lot of these veteran wide receivers that are 2 and 3 and 4 wideouts on other teams and, put them into 1 and 2 and 3 roles and expected them to play like, where DJ Moore left off or, what number 1 wide receiver is. And that hasn't been up to this point. So that I think has all played into it. But again, he hasn't played fantastic up to this point. And I'm not going to sit here and, say he's the best damn thing, coming out since what we've seen as rookie QBs. But I think it's going to take some time. And I think in the end, he's going to prove to a lot of people why the Panthers traded up to get him. I'm not discounting what CJ Stroud has done because he's looked great. And I thought he looked great. And I wouldn't have been upset if they would have ended up picking him in the end. But I think people just need to chill the hell out and give this thing some time. We're 2 games into this thing. The only reason why I posed the question, again, I think this is I just think it's a dumb question. But people wanted to know, so there you go. That's kind of where we're at with that. Let's go to the defense. We've talked about the offense enough up to this point. And I'm going to put this up here because I feel like this is kind of how this described how the defense side of the ball went on Sunday. Is they played really well in the first half, like really well. Was it 5 field goals? I think it was, or 4, maybe 4, maybe it was 4. I don't know. I think it wasn't like 16 to something at half. It was 5. So 5. They held Seattle to 5 field goals in the first half. They also had a turnover. I want to say they had a turnover in the first half. Did they not? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But defense played outstanding in the first half. I think that's obvious across the board. I don't think anyone can argue with that. Second half is where they fell off. I think that had to do in part with injuries, but there were guys that needed to step up that didn't when you're going against second and third string guys on that Seattle offense. Bryson, I know you have a lot to say, so go ahead.
Yeah. First off, I'm going to argue with you about the defense was outstanding in the first half of the game because I think allowing a team to drive consistently every time they get the ball and kick a field goal is not outstanding. We need stops with no points. I mean, that's just the way it is. And every time Seattle got the ball, they got a field goal. So
that's fair.
I think being able to go out and get a 3 and out, or allow them to get 1 first down, then stop and force a punt is outstanding. That's outstanding. I don't think allowing 5 field goals is outstanding. I think that's unacceptable. It's better than of course allowing 5 touchdowns like the Denver Broncos did in the first quarter against the Miami Dolphins. But I expect more. Like you talked about, the Seattle Seahawks were missing 4 out of their 5 starting offensive linemen, and their offensive line looked 10 times better versus our defensive line than our offensive line did versus Seattle's defensive line. Brian Burns, not enough from him for the past 2 weeks. I'm sorry. I was holding up the pay Brian Burns sign, and I still think you should pay him. But 1 sack in back-to-back weeks versus backup tackles and 4 hurries is not enough for a $30 million a year season or $30 million a season guy. That 1 sack is not enough. Arden Key had 1.5 sacks versus Trevor Penning in week 1 when the Titans played the Saints. Brian Burns through 2 weeks versus 2 backup tackles, 1 sack. I mean, I don't think that's enough. And then Derek Brown, he was the highest graded player on the defense.
While we're talking about Burns, though, because I want to talk about him before you get into Derek Brown. I agree with you. If he wants the type of money that, the Bosas of the world and the Watts of the world and some of these other top edge rushers, you got to come away with 2 or 3 sacks in this game. 2 I think at the minimum. If you're gonna, want 30 plus a year or whatever he wants. We don't know what he wants, but that's kind of what we're thinking at least. That needs to come. I don't think he was terrible though. I think he had a solid day. I just don't think it was at that elite level. It didn't take it to the next level, if that makes sense, because he did have 3 tackles for loss. I want to say he had 3 hurries, maybe. I'd have to look it up. No, 3 QB hits and 1 hurry. That's what it was. So a sack, 3 QB hits, 3 tackles for loss, 1 hurry. I thought it was a solid day, but I think he needed to make those 1 or 2 plays towards that end of the game to really get Carolina back in this thing, and those plays weren't there. But to be fair as well, he did not play a lot, which I was shocked because I just looked this up before we got on here. And he played, and I don't know if this has anything to do with him limping off the field last week. He only played, sorry, I should have had this pulled up, 68% of the defensive snaps on Sunday, which for a player like that, you'd like to see. I mean, that should be almost near 100%, like up there, like in the 80s or higher. So, but again, when you're called upon, especially when you're wanting that much money, I do agree with you. I think he needed to make a couple more impactful plays that would have, I think, changed or altered the momentum at all for this defense.
Yeah, and I think that number of percentage plays could go both ways, because you can say he's not on the field all the time, so he should be able to, when he's in those positions, when he's getting breaks, when he's rested and he comes on the field, he should be able to make plays in the time that he's on the field. So I'm not saying he was terrible, because he wasn't terrible. I mean, he was a good defensive lineman, but he wasn't a top 5 paid defensive lineman on Sunday. You watched the Monday night game with TJ Watt and the Steelers. TJ Watt is making almost every drive. He's disrupting something. He's forcing a fumble. He's picking something off. He's, a scoop and score for a touchdown. Brian Burns simply is not at that level right now. He's really not. This game, for most of the game, he just wasn't noticeable. I mean, I think I tweeted like 4 or 5 times, like, all right, Zero, we need something, man. Like the offense was at scoring. The offense was keeping us in the game. The defense was forcing field goals in the first half, and the offense was scoring and keeping up. And then, we needed to stop there in the fourth quarter, I think it was, and the defense couldn't. And that's when they needed it the most, and they just couldn't. And I know that they went through some injuries, losing a couple guys, which really sucks. I mean, losing Luvu. God, I hope he's healthy. I hope.
Yeah, you're jumping my graphics here. Let me pull this graphic up. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a couple guys, so hopefully, obviously that plays into their ability to get that stop when they needed it. But I just wasn't impressed, especially with the run defense. This is 3 weeks in a row that teams have their way with us running the ball. I don't understand what's going on. I think Shai Tuttle's struggling a little bit there at the nose tackle position. And I'm wondering if they're taking Brian Burns out because of his ability to set the edge in the run game.
There it is. There's your injuries.
68%. So yeah, Luvu really early on, I think it was, or maybe even at halftime, he was announced he wasn't coming back in. CJ Henderson was really early on. CJ Henderson played really good for the short amount of time he was in.
He deserves some flowers this week. He did play well.
He played really well. That Xavier Woods injury, man, that hurts. I think they announced today 4 to 6 weeks. Those safeties, I mean, that was one of the best tandems in the league back there. Mingo concussion, hopefully he can get through that protocol pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm hoping, I'm holding my breath on CJ and Frankie and hoping that it's not serious and it's, it was just a bruise and they're going to get out of that game and be able to, be ready for Sunday for the Vikings because we're going to need them versus that offense. So yeah, I think the defense has been kind of getting off easy these past couple of weeks, but they haven't been what we thought they could be. And I understand losing JC Horn and, the other guys that they have lost hurts them, but I've expected a little more than what I've seen, even with the injuries from that defense.
Yeah, sorry, I was playing around with these a little bit just to see what we got. But no, I mean, I think defensively, and I get it, this is not an excuse, but I feel like once those injuries happen, it hindered a lot of shit in that second half. They obviously got to step it up, though, because Seattle was dealing with a lot of injuries as well. Yeah. But Frankie, massive. I mean, that was huge, him going out. CJ Henderson was playing good up to that point. I mean, he was locking down DK a lot. He played well. I've given him a lot of shit. So I hope he's back soon. I hope it's not long for him. Obviously, we know the Xavier Woods injury, 4 to 6 weeks. That, I like Sam Franklin, but I think that's going to hurt a little bit. Jonathan Mingo, we obviously concussion. I don't know if he's going to be able to go this Sunday. That means this is the come out game for TMJ. Like he needs to show up. Yeah. Obviously we know Bryce Young, but Carolina has been hit hard by injuries this year. It's ridiculous. This is the worst it's been in a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
And it's not an excuse because every team's dealing with it. I know Baltimore's got a shit ton. I mean, they got a laundry list of guys too. But for Carolina with such a young team, I feel like Baltimore's already pretty well established as a roster. They can kind of overcome some of those. For Carolina, they need all these guys to be healthy to even, compete type of thing. So losing any of these guys, they just don't have the depth. So, but just hats off. I feel like just sticking with defense here, I thought the corners, obviously, they gave up some plays, but I thought the guys that stepped in played decent. Dante Jackson struggled in this game heavily. He had that running back, and I tweeted this out. He had the one where he got burnt by the running back. That's back-to-back weeks where that's happened, where running back comes out of the backfield. I think it was a wheel route. I'm not entirely sure, but beat him down the sideline. Those type of plays can't happen when it's a corner on a running back. He should be able to lock those guys up. He shows flashes at times. It's not consistent enough for this team, and that's been an issue these last couple of years. But I am thankful that he's healthy because he's better. He's better than some of these other options. If we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 type DBs, I'd rather have him out there than some of these other guys. But man, he's got to figure it out sometimes with consistency because that's been a struggle for him. But I just think that Frankie Luvu injury was huge because you got to remember, they're already down Shaq Thompson. So you're already playing Camus in there. And now you have to take Frankie out, who's not only a really good player, he brings the juice on that defense. Him and Von Bell, I mean, those are the guys that, they're going to fire you up. And then obviously you got Brian Burns. But when you don't have those guys in there and you got Deion Jones, who they just brought in from the practice squad playing, and I know he's with them in training camp, and you got Camus in there. And I think those guys have done a decent job in this last game, but that it's going to hurt. And this week it's going to be a struggle when, they're going up Minnesota. I get it, they're 0-3, but they got pieces. and they're putting up points in games. It's not like they're losing and putting up, what Carolina's putting up offensively. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a tough test. But yeah, I think defense didn't step up when they needed to, and I think even Frank admitted that. He's like, those guys got to make plays when it's crunch time, and we needed them to get a stop and they didn't get it. And then just compounded with injuries, it sucked defensively for this team, because I felt like up to this point the defense has been, and this has been the story the past couple of years, has been the strong suit of this team and keeping them in games. So sorry, I was going off on a tangent.
All good.
Anything else defensively?
No, I just need that defensive line to step up and make a difference week in and week out. That's all. I think YGM was probably the best player on the defensive line this past week.
Thank you. I was just about to say something about him, because he deserves credit, because he's back-to-back sacks now.
Yeah.
He's got 2 sacks on the year. I have his stats pulled up here somewhere. Yeah. 2 sacks on the year. And his season highs for sacks his highest was 4 in 2021. So he's already halfway there through 3 games.
Yeah.
I felt like on this past weekend I don't know what it is statistically. I haven't checked every game, but I felt like it was one of his better games he's played in Carolina. I thought he set the edge well. I thought he made a couple of plays in the backfield, and obviously had a sack as well. So I felt like, and he played a lot too. I mean, his snap count for this weekend, he didn't play as much as I thought he did. He only had 56% on the defensive side, but I feel like he made the most of it when he was in there. At least it's the way I felt.
Okay, I got some breaking news. Joe Person stated that, Kanu Grugier-Hill said that on Monday that he didn't expect Frankie to miss time due to the hip pointer, and a league source concurs that Xavier Woods' hamstring is a greater concern. The safety could miss a month or more. So I guess Joe is concurring that they don't expect Frankie to miss any time due to his hip pointer. So.
Well, that would be huge, and Joe must have been hearing us talk about this injury report, because that was hell of a timing there. Yeah, that's great, dude. That's really good. And I like I'm a big fan of Deion Jones. He obviously had the pick Sunday. Yeah. Like, if he can get back to some sort of form from Atlanta, like he had some flash in there. He struggled at times too in the game too. He wasn't perfect, but I thought for stepping in, he did a decent job. And Camus he had a couple struggles in there too on Sunday, but that's been a underrated signing. Yeah. Between him and Troy Hill. Like, Troy Hill has stepped up too. Like, those, I mean, 4 or 5 weeks ago, you were talking about Camus, but 4 or 5 weeks ago, no one knew the hell Troy Hill was, like, on this team. Like, you didn't know. And this guy comes in and he stepped right in, and he's done a decent job. I mean, it's not no remarkable play, but the guy is, making the most, I feel like, of what he's been given, and how much time he's been here and the amount of plays he's made. I feel like it's been an underrated signing for both of those guys. So, Justin Houston, I think, was it his first sack this weekend? I don't know his stats, but I think he had a sack as well in this game for Carolina. And I'm not sure if it was the first one or not, but I thought he had some good pass rush attempts in there as well. I'm just trying to look this up quickly.
Let's see.
Stat sheet doesn't have a sack. I thought he was in there on one of those plays. Maybe not. He did have 2 QB hits, but according to the stat sheet on NFL.com, he doesn't have anything in there. But I thought he played. I thought he shined a little bit in some of those opportunities. I feel like we haven't heard much about him these last couple of weeks. So I thought he played. He had a decent game as well.
One other player I want to call out that needs to be better, flat out, Jeremy Chin. How do you give up that
tweet? I saw your tweet.
How do you give up that 2-point conversion where it's floating in the air for 3 minutes? And Tyler Lockett's got time to do a 360, drop down and do 10 push-ups and get back up. skip across to the other side and skip back to the other side of the end zone and catch the ball on you, and you haven't turned around to see that. Jeremy Chin, awful in coverage. I mean, get that man out of anywhere near playing coverage on a wide receiver. Change his position to linebacker. Do not let him cover tight ends and running backs, and hold your breath and hope that he can do that. But this man should not be covering Tyler Lockett at all. He just hasn't been good. Jeremy Chin hasn't. Last game
he had a good week. I thought he had a good week last week.
I was going to say last week was all right, but I think he played like 38% or 28% of the snaps. This week was awful.
He had his best week. I think he was one of the best defensive players last week, personally. But I agree with you. I think he did.
And they needed him the most this week, and he had one of his worst games as a Carolina Panthers. So we need
I was wearing his jersey too.
So yeah, you can burn that fucking thing.
Hey, no, I ain't burning no. I still got Kelvin Benjamin somewhere in the closet. That one might need to be burned.
He does need to step up. I'm holding his feet to the fire. He needs to step up. I mean, he's got no excuse. He's got no excuse to not play better than what he has. He had a good game not too long ago, but when they needed him the most this past week, he was a no-show.
All right, let's talk about this before we get into the preview matchup for this weekend, because I want to get your take on this. So Saints sign Jake Luton, quarterback. He was the backup this week in Carolina. Played in Jacksonville last year a little bit, or these last couple of years. And then Carolina works out 2 QBs today. So Bryce Petty and Kellen Mond. What do you make of them trying these guys out? Do you think this is a telltale sign that Bryce is going to be ready to go this week because they haven't signed one of them yet? Or do you think it's just they might be signing one of them tomorrow? So I just wanted to get your take. Does this allude to anything with Bryce Young? Because I'm trying to find anything. I mean, I'm sure you are too. Of is Bryce going to play this week? So just what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my opinion on this is that this has nothing to do with Bryce Young and his ability or his availability for Sunday. This has everything to do with the Saints signing our third string quarterback and us needing one. So they tried out Bryce Perkins and Kellen Mond, and they're just Bryce Perkins has the history with why am I so close? Holy shit!
I mix it up every once in a while.
Bryce Young has Bryce Perkins has the history with Thomas Brown in the Rams. Kellen Mond, just a young quarterback in the league. So they're just trying to get the third string quarterback position signed and figured out for this roster. Now they lost Luton to the Saints, so fuck the Saints. Hate the Saints still, and I don't think it has anything to do with Bryce Young's availability.
See, I was trying to read tea leaves here. I was like, maybe this, but then I'm thinking, but they could sign someone tomorrow, and if they're, but then I can also think like this kind of worries me if they're trying to go out and get a guy again, like immediately. So I don't know. I just want to see Bryce Young back out there. I know you're worried with the offensive line, but I just think he needs reps, and the longer he sits, I hate it. But I don't know a lot about these guys. I know Kellen Mond a little bit. Petty.
Perkins.
That's his Perkins. See, I don't even know his last name. I'm losing it. Perkins. Yeah, I don't know much about him. I know he's had familiarity with Thomas Brown, so that might be a guy they go and pick up. But it's interesting that you don't hear anything about Corral anymore, which is obviously very telling that this staff didn't really think much of him at all. So, just something to monitor because tomorrow is the big day. Like, that's what everyone is waiting on. Will Bryce practice tomorrow? Because if he doesn't, I feel like that's going to be a pretty telltale sign that we might be seeing Andy Dalton again this weekend against the Vikings. So,
even if he gets in a limited, I think he's playing Sunday. If he's a DMP on install day, which Wednesdays are typically install days, I believe for the Panthers. So I think that as long as he's limited, I think he is playing. If it's a DMP, like I said, I think it's Andy Dalton again versus the Vikings.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's got to be limited at the very least for him. I would be shocked if he's DNP and then Thursday or Friday he practices and he's in there. But let's talk about the game this weekend because I called it the toilet bowl. It's probably not that because I think there's some teams that are a little bit worse right now. Chicago, yeah, fuck Chicago. I love every bit of that. But
their game is legitimately the toilet bowl. The Bears versus the Broncos. 0-3 versus 0-3.
Oh yeah, there's a couple 0-3 teams playing this week. Yeah. That's right. So Minnesota comes to town. Carolina, again, this was under Matt Rule, has played Minnesota well. They haven't won, but they played them well. It's been competitive. It comes down to the last drive typically. Obviously, a whole new regime now, but I think me and you were at that game when it went to overtime. Were you there? You were there with me, I believe, 2 years ago, 2021. They went in overtime. That was the Adam Thielen game. I believe he's the one who had the touchdown to win the game, if I'm not mistaken. So this is Adam Thielen revenge game. So, and we know Von Bell played well against the Saints. So hopefully we can get a lot more of that too out of Adam Thielen. He obviously had his best game of the season this past weekend, and hopefully he can build off of that. But I talked about it earlier in this episode, Bryson, but the Vikings, they're a zone scheme defense. So I hope they're not pressing man press because I feel like Carolina has struggled with that up to this point offensively. But another thing is the Vikings blitz a lot. And I thought I saw this somewhere. They blitzed this past weekend against the Chargers like 80% of the time. 80% of the time they blitzed Herbert. So
it scares me.
Carolina's going to have their hands full. And you talked about it, Daniil Hunter. He is the sack leader, right? 7 sacks, I think it is already. 7 or 6, something like that. He's got a lot. It's going to be a tough game. And Justin Jefferson, that guy is something else.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough pill.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson leads the league in receiving yards. Kirk Cousins leads the league in passing yards. And they have Daniil Hunter who leads the league in sacks. So they've been in every game they've played. They've lost every game by single or, within a score, a single score. So I think that this is not a bad team that we're going to be playing. I mean, their defense isn't very good compared to other teams in the league, but their offense is technically the best. With Kirk Cousins, who's had a really good year. I mean, it's not been his fault that they're losing. And then their running game kind of got going this past week with Alexander Madison, and they traded for Cam Akers. So this is the defense is going to have to step up. It can't be drive after drive. They're driving down, getting a touchdown and a field goal and a field goal, then another touchdown and another field goal. They need stops. They need turnovers. I know it's going to be hard. It's going to be a tough ask. We will see where CJ is this week, and Dante. Honestly, I think CJ's the guy that would be on Justin Jefferson. I don't trust Dante on Justin Jefferson. I think CJ's more consistent in his coverage than Dante is. CJ's going to give up a couple deep balls, but he's going to be in coverage. Dante's going to give up a couple of deep balls. He's not going to be anywhere to be found on the TV screen when Justin Jefferson is catching a touchdown. So I think CJ is our best cover corner that we have right now. Unfortunately, that's how bad we are. But I think this is going to be a tough game for Carolina. It's in Minnesota, right? And it's in Carolina. Okay, my bad.
It's in Carolina.
Right. In Carolina, I don't really think that makes a difference. There's probably going to be more Vikings fans there anyways. But, I think –
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, just when the game we were at was last year or 2 years ago. There
2 years ago.
More Vikings fans. So I think that this is going to be a tough game, and I think we might be staring 0-4 in the face.
Yeah, the one statistically, just looking that way, the numbers, this could be a get-right game for the offense because their defense is not very good right now. The Vikings, they're 27th in yards per game, 25th in pass yards per game, 19th in rush yards per game, and 26th in points per game. And they're 32nd in giveaways. Is that defensively, or I'm confused by that? But anyway, so if Bryce Young does come back, I feel like they could take advantage of that a little bit. And, Adam Thielen should offer at least, something for this coaching staff of a little bit of insight. I mean, he played for the same coaching staff, not defensively, because they have a new defensive coordinator, but offensively, he should be giving the defense, some pointers on what they kind of run schematically for them. So that should be a plus. But I think a lot needs to fall into place for Carolina to have a chance. I think, obviously if Frankie's healthy, from Joe Person's reporting, CJ Henderson hopefully is, it's nothing major and he can play this week. I feel like that could help them. Let's go to prediction. I guess I'll start it off this week. I'm going to be hopeful. I'm going to be, optimistic this week that Carolina gets out of the rut and they win this game. I don't know how, but they win this game. Bryce Young plays. These have been close in the past. I'm going to go, just looking at it, I'm just trying to drag this out a little bit. I want to see what the Vikings have scored this year. I always like to look at that. I'm going to say Carolina wins 21-17. Low scoring. I can't do that, though. They can't score 3 touchdowns. No, 24-17 Carolina. There's going to be some field goals in there. So 24-17 Carolina wins by a touchdown. I'm really just hoping for a prayer, but I got to bring some optimism because I'm tired of this losing shit. And by the way, Carolina has only started 0-4. I'm sorry, Siri just trying to jump in on the conversation here. But Carolina has only started 0-4, I think, 3 other times. 95, 98, I think, and then 2010. They started the season 0-4, and we remember 2010. That was the Jimmy Clausen year. And then good old Cam Newton came the following year and saved this franchise. But yeah, it's been brutal. What do you got? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I'm not as optimistic I was last week, and it bit me in the ass. So, yeah, I'm no longer going to be picking the Panthers to win until they show me that they can, especially versus teams that have the ability that the Vikings do. Like I said, I think the Vikings are a good team. I think that they've kind of got last year. I think they were like 11-1 in one-score games, and now the luck's kind of going the other way for them. They've lost their first 3 games and one-score games. So I think the Vikings' offense is too much for this Panthers defense. I think that the Panthers offense will score some points. I think that they'll score more if Bryce does play. I think that this could be his get-right game if he does play. But I got the Vikings in the league passing leader and the league receiving leader scoring 31, and the Panthers scoring 21.
I just want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Panthers on Tap podcast. You can catch our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap for all your analysis and breaking news. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that bell. We appreciate it all. Give us some comments. Ask us questions on there. Whatever you'd like to do, we would appreciate it. And we like the insight and the back and forth between our listeners. And as always,